He can learn the name of every bird in the sky, but he never learned how to treat the person standing next to him.
Welcome to the Couple Cure.
Most men can go pretty deep on things that they're really interested in, whether it's sports statistics or work skills, hobbies, trivia, technology, whatever. So it's not that he's incapable of learning. He just has that ability pointed or focused at things that matter most to him and not focused on the things that matter most to you. He doesn't invest in how to listen or how to rebuild trust or how to stay present when things get uncomfortable. It's not because he can't, it's because he hasn't. The idea of continuous learning is about him redirecting that capacity toward the gaps in your relationship, putting effort in where it really is going to matter and make a difference. Let me give you an example from something that happened between Lori and I. We were watching a bird fly, and Lori asked me what kind of bird it was, and I said, "Oh, well, that's a turkey vulture." And she said, "Why couldn't you just call it a vulture?" I said, "Well, that's, the way I learned it." And what had frustrated her about that was I hadn't really taken the time to learn how to treat her or other people better. And that hit because she was right. I had been investing my learning in everything except what our marriage needed. If that sounds familiar to you, you're not alone. And it doesn't mean that he doesn't care. It probably means nobody taught him where to put his effort, how to put it in that right direction. That's what this step is about. For the sake of an example, one of the biggest gaps I think most men have, especially men who have come out of the world of addiction, is they have a very limited emotional vocabulary. We're lucky if they have 5 words, so he might say, "I'm fine," but what he really means is he's ashamed or overwhelmed, scared or lost. When he doesn't have the words, you might get fine or angry or I don't know, or I don't know, I just feel off. Once he starts working on that and expanding that vocabulary, you'll begin to hear it. He'll have a little bit more detail in being able to say, well, today I'm feeling a little overwhelmed because of work, or I'm feeling scared, I have something coming up, I'm feeling anxious. He may not always feel really comfortable with it, so he might say, I think I'm feeling this way, but I'm not 100% clear, but you'll get something instead of I don't know, or I was just mad, or I was frustrated. And that small shift can really change a lot about how you communicate together. There's a book that I like that really helps with that vocabulary of emotions, and I'll put a recommendation for that down below. So you'll know this is happening when conversations start getting more specific, when he stops saying, I don't know, and he begins to say things like, I think I was feeling this way or that way. And so that's when you'll know whether or not he's putting that effort into learning the stuff that's important to your relationship. Another big piece that I want to hit on is this idea of empathy, his ability to read what you're feeling. If you haven't seen this in some of the other videos that Lori and I have done, men tend to interpret emotions, especially with direct eye contact, as either anger or aggression. And so while you might be exhausted, disappointed, hurt, or scared, his brain is making up something about you being angry or upset with him. And that may lead straight to defensiveness. That's a skill gap. That's why we're talking about learning something new. Empathy can be learned. It is not a fixed skill. It's something that if you put time into it, if he puts time into it, he can learn how to empathize with you. And you'll kind of feel it before he tells you that he's doing it. He'll be able to respond better to those emotions, to your tears, to your words better than he has in the past. He may ask what's wrong instead of assuming that he's in trouble. Going back to the episode that I did on loneliness, empathy is a bridge to connection. And so without it, he's going to stay isolated even inside the marriage. And you're going to continue to feel lonely because he's missing what you're trying to share with him. And so you're not asking too much when you want him to understand what you're feeling. You're asking for a skill that he hasn't built yet, but he can build it. I've built this particular skill over time myself. Not 100%, but I'm much better than I was. Things you can watch for is whether or not he's starting to read new books, he's starting to listen to new podcasts, he's starting to do something that helps him learn how to relate to people and not just stay focused on his own interests. Is he starting to ask questions that he's never asked before, or maybe even he's coming to you and saying, hey, based on what you said earlier, I think you might have been feeling missed or feeling misunderstood, something like that. He's probably not going to be very good at it at first, but he will get better at it over time if he keeps putting the effort in. One of the other things you'll notice is that he'll probably get a little bit more specific about how he feels, more than just happy, sad, mad, tired, angry, but he might say, new words like disappointed or distressed or overwhelmed or elated. Watch and see if his language begins to change. He might also be learning from the people in his circle, the men that he hangs out with, the mentor. We'll be talking about mentors in the next episode. You're not going to really need to quiz him about this, but it will begin to show up in your conversations going forward. Again, his learning is his responsibility. You don't have to be his teacher. You do get to have a say in what he works on. Hopefully, he recognizes the same issues that you do as well. But once he starts to do that work, you should begin to see it change without having to assign it to him. We're going to be talking about mentoring on the next episode. It's helpful for men to find somebody who's further down the road, who's walked through some of the things that he needs to learn and can show him all the stuff that a book can't. That's what I've been doing for years, is reading and sharing, not just out of books, but out of all of the mistakes that I've made, out of the things that I've done that have worked well, and from what I've learned from my own mentor. If you haven't done so already, have him go to stormreadymen.com and take the assessment.